Welcome to Forever Fierce. I'm Catherine Grace O'Connell, and I'm so excited. Right now we are shooting actually our second show here, and here we are in the Essex Street Inn in downtown Newburyport, Massachusetts. I've never been here, but boy, I'm coming back again. It has been an amazing experience, and the Essex Street Inn is actually our sponsor for the show, and we are so delighted to be here. So my guest today is Tracy Chadwell. And Tracy is the founding partner of 1843 Capital. She is a venture capitalist, and yes, we'll let you know what that is if you don't know what that is. But more importantly, she is a rare woman in a man's world. So welcome to the show, Tracy.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. And thank you for doing what you're doing, because it's really exciting and it's great to showcase what interesting women are doing and what they can do going forward.
Well, thank you so much, because it's kind of a rare conversation when we bring somebody in like you from the financial world, but we have yet to have anyone who is a venture capitalist. So let's start there for the women out there that don't necessarily know what a venture capitalist is and does.
Sure, absolutely. Venture capital is a really interesting piece of finance. And for most people's business, it's probably a little bit out of reach because it's a little esoteric. It's meant for those top 1% or 2% of companies that can reach $100 million in revenue and then to become I'm sure you've heard, the unicorns, which is the company that's valued at $1 billion. So instead of debt that you would get from a bank, a loan, this is a piece of equity where we finance a company by taking part of the stock and part of the ownership, it's a minority stake, into the company to help facilitate their growth.
Wonderful.
And we're expecting big returns. I sort of joke and say, if you want to do things cheaply, go take out money on your credit card, because they're only expecting 30%. I'm expecting above 50% returns on my money.
Wow. You might as well go in and have high expectations, right?
Exactly. Well, and that's because so many of them fail. So we have to shoot for the moon because a lot of them are going to go under.
You said the percentage of startups, the majority is 90%?
It's 90% of startups fail. It's pretty incredible, but the numbers for women are a lot lower.
So if 90% of startups fail,
yes.
What is it why do they fail, and what is it you're looking for in a company that you want to invest in that you think is going to be that, unicorn?
The number one reason that companies fail is because of a lack of a market. There's a saying, don't start a company unless someone asks you to do that. And so many people think that they have a really great idea, a really great technology, but it doesn't actually solve a real problem. And that's where your market comes in. Are there people out there that have this problem to such an extent that they're willing to pay money for it? And a lot of times the answer is no.
So there's a need, and you're filling that need.
Absolutely.
So right now, what companies you're brand new, you launched this year.
Yes.
And you've had your first investment.
Yes.
And, what are the companies that you are looking to invest in? And give me parameters. What would interest you to give money to that company?
Absolutely. Well, maybe a little key to that would be if I tell you what the name means. So 1843 is the year that Ada Lovelace wrote the first computer program. So that's a nod to women in tech. And what we do is we fund women in tech. We have a preference for women founders. We are activist investors. If we find a team that's an all-male team, we'll have them put a woman on the team. But what we are beyond just looking for interesting women that are doing interesting things, we are also looking for technology companies that solve a real problem, often in places like finance or cybersecurity, or one of my favorite spaces, which is I call silver tech, technology for the aging.
Oh, I do. I love that. So we could have a whole show on that. Maybe we will. But yes. Yeah, I love that, because there really aren't many people out there doing that.
There really are not.
And so you're in a woman in a man's world where there aren't many of you. So that's a wonderful thing.
Right.
And now you're also looking to invest in companies that a lot of men are going to be overlooking, even in the space that you're in.
You're exactly right. Only 3% of the partners of venture capital firms are women. We're extremely rare. And I did a little quick survey. There's only been 30 women out of 800 venture capital firms that have actually started their own firms. So venture capital firms are now starting to hire more women. They are having awareness about this. But there was a study done by the Michelle Clayman Institute at Stanford that said that the magic number really is 3 for women on boards before they feel comfortable voicing their opinions or standing up for a female-founded company. And so to the extent that these firms are hiring one woman partner, it's probably not going to solve the issue for them. And what the issue is the fact that women are getting 2.19% of venture capital funding.
I read that statistic and I blew my mind.
It's not that they only have 2% of the good ideas out there. It's just that, as you said, they're really being overlooked, which is really unfortunate because they're doing some really interesting things. This is where I benefit because it's a completely inefficient market and you can make above market returns if you're looking in places that other people aren't. So I look at it as a big windfall.
A no-brainer. You think, you want to make money? Well,
Right.
There's a whole opportunity here, but we're all looking over here.
Right.
Which is kind of almost a metaphor for what we started talking about before the show. We always have a little pre-show conversations about this whole millennial world and youth fascination, because you're really looking over here at a much bigger pool, like you said, silver investing, which I think is fascinating, because we have a great, enormous part of our population that is getting older, and those people have a lot of money, 80% of the wealth. Women,
Right.
Over 50, which is enormous.
Right.
People over 50. So why do you think we have this culture with this millennial youth fascination that really doesn't help the bottom line?
I think it's a couple of things. I think the American culture is one that has a fascination with youth. So first and foremost, we're headed that way. Also, though, there are all these new accelerator programs and incubator programs. Now, these companies are in it for the money. They're making money. Most likely, those accelerators are not going to attract founders that have founded 1 or 2 or 3 companies. In fact,
what's an accelerator program? So let's make sure because we're not necessarily, our audience may not know what that is.
Sure, absolutely. So accelerator programs, and there are many, many of them now, and they're focused either on a certain business opportunity, or if there's some that are focused on women in tech, there's some that are focused on insurance tech, there's some that are focused on health tech. These are essentially charm school for companies. And they attract a lot of young first-time founders because a first-time founder may not know what the right corporate structure is. They may not know how to find a co-founder. Some of them go to an accelerator looking for a co-founder. They have a good idea, but they don't have anyone to do it with. They might be looking for a technical team, and then last, they're looking for investors. So these accelerators and incubators, after they have their cohorts graduate, they do what's called a demo day, and they bring in all the investors. So the investors are seeing group after group after group of young founders. But you know what? There was a study done by MIT that said that the most successful founders of high-growth companies, the average age is 45 years old.
Wow. Did you hear that? I mean, now that is incredible. And I imagine that's a statistics that we don't really hear about and talk about.
No.
We think everything is, these 20 and 25 and 30-year-olds that are, making millions, and everyone else is kind of done and invisible and not productive. But that certainly blows that out of the water, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And there are so many interesting companies that are being done by, the 3rd and 4th time founder. And these people have been there, done that. And so they're not making those rookie mistakes.
So I know we missed MIT, Joseph Coughlin. He is the head of the Age Lab at MIT, and I know you've been trying to reach him, and we are going to be doing a show with Joseph, and he wrote the book, The Longevity Economy.
Yes, which is fantastic.
It's fantastic. You guys got to get this book if you really want to understand how important this demographic is, and like you said, silver investing, and really opening your mindset to the possibility that, people, midlife and beyond, are pretty darn cool, and we have a wealth of life experience and wisdom and intelligence, and that really translates into, we're shoppers, we're purchasing those brands, we're making those decisions, but we are also we're tech savvy, all these things that they think we aren't. So in your experience, Joseph's work, and that this longevity economy obviously is loaded with wealth, loaded with value.
Yeah.
So why do you think there is this ongoing, like you said, youth fascination, but it isn't supporting the bottom line?
Right. It's pretty interesting. You quoted the AARP number earlier, which is that 80% of the wealth in this country is held by people over 50. That's extraordinary.
It's extraordinary. Another
really interesting statistic that people don't really know is that women now control more wealth in the country than men do. So women are controlling $14.2 trillion of wealth.
And why
It's
do
extraordinary.
you think that is a hidden statistic? That's crazy that we don't talk about that.
We don't talk about it. I think a lot of investment decisions maybe are still made by men or male wealth advisors, but I know that there's a lot of initiatives to change that, and change takes a little bit of time, so we'll start to see it. But as the recognition starts to shift to where people know that these are where the assets are, we're already seeing development, especially I work on the technology side. So I'm starting to see companies that are focused on what we call a pain point in these places, which are things like sort of a TripAdvisor for assisted living facilities. I don't know if you know that people leave assisted living facilities every 90 days.
I had no idea.
It's pretty extraordinary.
Wow.
But there's other really interesting companies just for financial wellness. You know, people think millennials are sexy. I think financial health is sexy. I think it's
you're changing a frame here.
Sure,
I like that.
you're being, you know, you're a much more confident person if you have your financial house in order. So there's a lot of tools now that are out there that can aggregate your annuity stream and your IRA and your pension dollars and help you plan, because people are living a lot longer than they ever thought that they would be before, and it's very responsible and very sexy to plan for that. There's also other really sort of not as sexy, but there are tools now to help plan memorial services and things like that that haven't been in place.
And we have to talk about these things because
Sure,
it's reality.
it's happening.
It is happening, and there's actually a way to make money. I hate to say it, but
and to do it in a positive and beautiful way too.
Exactly, like you're changing the frame. Every conversation that you have started here is changing a frame, changing a paradigm, making a cultural shift around our perception of money, our perception of women and money.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So tell me, what is your background then, Tracy? Because I think in one of the emails exchanges I had with you, we're in our 50s.
Yes.
And growing up, I did not see women doing what you were doing. I didn't know what venture capital was. Oh, interesting. So how did you get into this? It's really a man's world. It's a male-dominated world still to this day. How did you get attracted into venture capital? Share that path.
I didn't know what venture capital was. I had a father who was a lawyer, and I had a mother who said to me, you need to go ahead and get a law degree as a fallback in case something happens to your husband. And so I went to law school, but found out that I loved law school. I loved the practice of law. But then what I really found out when I worked for a small merchant banking firm doing their legal work, that I was really attracted to the finance side. So I asked them if I could switch and start to learn how to do financial models for companies and not just do the corporate structure, and found it was really incredibly interesting, and then had a job open up at an investment bank called Robertson Stephens, which I'm sure that a lot of people watching remember the go-go days of the 90s, where a lot of technology companies were IPOing, you know, not ending up in a good place, but it was a really exciting time. Technology had just taken off, and there were a lot of IPOs, and so that company was doing that, and they were also doing venture capital, and so that's where I learned the business. And then I became a partner of a venture capital firm that was located in New York City, and then decided it was time to start my own.
Amazing, and that's a very rare thing.
It is a rare thing.
Yeah, we don't see many. Obviously, we don't see many women. We don't see many women in their 50s founding venture capital firms. Now, that also translates into money. Like you said, 2% of venture capital goes to women, which is crazy. And the reason I read that, and you're in this world, so you explain it, is because they're male-dominated companies and men give money to men.
Well, you know, the thing is it's all about network. And there are some venture capital firms that have on their website, please contact someone that we know to make an introduction.
Oh, interesting. So it's a male
They
world.
won't even allow you to cold pitch, which is one of the reasons people go to accelerators, so that they can get to the demo day, so they can get in front of people that they don't know. So what's happening is there's sort of a circle of capital, and I saw this when I was at Robertson Stephens and I was on the West Coast, that someone will found a technology company, they'll make a lot of money from it, and then they'll turn around and fund new entrepreneurs that they know that they worked for in their company with that seed capital, and then the venture capitalists that they knew that funded them will then seed it. And so it's just a circle of capital that keeps happening. But now what's really interesting is now that we're coming into this phase, and the real glory days of women entrepreneurs, we're just hitting our stride right now, and it has really accelerated over the last 5 years. But now we're seeing really successful women entrepreneurs, and they're giving back and they're helping to fund companies, and we're seeing the rise of venture capital funds that have that advantage of being led by women. So we're looking for women.
Oh, that's so exciting. Yeah. And I know I shared with you Shark Tank and this Kevin O'Leary, who's known as Mr. Wonderful. I think it's a fabulous show, and it opens our mindset to really what goes on in making those investing decisions. And he said his most successful investments are the investments in companies owned by women.
Right. And that is absolutely true. You know, another study by MIT showed, or it was just recently out. Actually, it was not MIT; it was BCG, the Boston Consulting Group, did a fantastic study on the Mass Challenge. All the applicants and the companies that went through Mass Challenge, which is interesting because we're sitting here in Massachusetts, and there's so many great research for women. So the Boston Consulting Group realized that by analyzing all of these companies that have gone through there, that women have received on average half as much dollars, investable dollars, but then they end up with 10% more revenues.
Incredible.
So on a dollar for dollar basis, a woman-founded company is, for every dollar invested, realizing about 78 cents on the dollar, and male companies, in this particular survey, 31 cents, which is pretty extraordinary. They're very, very efficient with capital. I've found that, because they have to be, because they hate raising money so much because it's difficult.
Interesting. Well, the numbers spep. Numbers
they
don't lie.
No,
and
absolutely. The research is out there.
Yeah, those are really powerful statistics.
Yeah.
So you brought up BCG, and I went to Vanderbilt University, and it seemed like that was one of those companies that all the guys, were getting jobs as consultants, but I didn't see a single woman, and there were incredible women coming out of Vanderbilt and then Owen Business School and going on. There wasn't a single female friend of mine that ended up going into BCG. It's
really true. And when I was a partner of a growth capital firm that had $1 billion under management in New York City, we never saw a woman entrepreneur come through the doors. It's really extraordinary. It's just been a result of sort of the recent flow of education to women. Even though they're starting businesses at the rate of over 1,000 per day, a lot of them have been small businesses. They're self businesses where they're not hiring people. But I think there's been an awakening. I think that when you reach out and say, hey, we're looking for you, and hey, we'd like to find ways to fund you, it encourages people. And there's a lot of really incredible women out there with really wonderful ideas that deserve to be funded. Wonderful ideas and wonderful qualities. I mean, there are qualities a woman has. Clearly, men and women are different. And, we have compassion and empathy, and we're natural nurturers and mothers, and we're leaders of our own household. That's obviously one of Joseph Coughlin's, the future is female, it's female over 50 in his perspective, because we are running the household and we're making those decisions. And why then we're discounted later on when our children go, we have all these incredible resources to go out there, and clearly we're proving it. Yes, but we just aren't getting validated through the financial world yet. Right. I always say it's the only inefficient market that you can have in the Wall Street Journal almost every day, and people still don't believe it. Interesting. But back to your point about women doing good things for the world too, we don't consider ourselves an impact fund. We're not looking to do things in the impact space necessarily, but just by nature, women are more drawn to doing things that are both profitable but that are good for the world as well. One of my most spectacularly successful companies is one called Beautycounter. Oh, yes, I saw that. Yes, they won a #1 up there. And Greg Renfrew is a phenomenal CEO, a second-time CEO in her 40s. Oh, really? Yes, which is fantastic. And she's one of the fastest-growing companies there is. But its mission is to take toxins out of the body care that we use, whether it's the 5 pounds of lipstick that we eat every year, or whether it's the body lotion and shampoo that we're putting on our hair. She has worked with the Environmental Working Group to take those toxins out to keep us all safer. So money and ethics don't have to be mutually exclusive. You can actually make money
while doing really good things in the world.
Exactly. And the company we funded most recently is one called AgriList, which is a company that does analytics for indoor farms. And I don't know if you know this, but the climate change has caused such a problem with farming. And so we always say that Allison is literally feeding the world, because by making indoor farms more profitable, we'll have, more tomatoes, more basil, more lettuces, at a lower price, but also at a lower food mile cost, so that these indoor farms can be built near city centers, so you don't have to use so much carbon footprint to get the food to the end user, the consumer. But then also too, she has been doing analytics on cannabis, which it does have a recreational use, but then also has a phenomenal medical use for, especially as people are aging and they're having trouble sleeping. There's uses for that. Also, I know there's some phenomenal arthritis lotions.
There's a whole wealth of products now using cannabis, and I personally used it when I had Lyme disease, and I found the CBD oil, without any psychoactive properties. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Yes. So women, we are able to really think outside the box. We have so many incredible qualities, and so great for you to be tapping into that space.
Exactly. I am one of the lucky ones, I think, that realizes what's going on, not just with women themselves, but then also too in the aging and helping the aging space. So it's exciting.
So Tracy, you did a TED Talk, and it was all about the ask. Around the ask. So as women, I know for me, that has always been, an issue sort of programmed into me as a little girl. You just stay here in the background, you don't have needs, you don't ask for anything, you're invisible. And so how, as women, do we use what you've learned in the world of venture capital to help women to pitch themselves, be it for venture capital or just in life in general? Right.
Well, this is, you're hitting on something that I'm really passionate about, because one of the reasons that women aren't getting the type of venture capital dollars that they truly deserve for the really interesting things that they're building, it's not just that they don't have the networks, but a lot of times, like you said, they were taught not to ask for things. And so going in and pitching their businesses and asking for funding for their companies is really, really difficult. And at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be. And it's not just about muscle memory, although men get muscle memory because they ask girls for dates time after time after time, and they get rejected and get rejected. But then when they do get that validation of someone saying yes to them, then they say, okay, this worked, so I'm going to head and go and do it again. So what I think, though, to break it down for women, is if you have a process. Because when you say it's a process or sort of a job that you're doing, it takes a lot of the fear away from it. And there's a couple of just really basic things that people don't really think about. Sometimes they just go out and it's not about just having the courage to ask. It's just not that simple. You really have to do your homework. And one of the things that I try to tell women that are raising money for venture capital funds, but this could be anything, if you're looking for a new job, or you're asking for a promotion, or if you want to ask a guy on a date, to really know the person that you are asking, and to try to figure out what is it that they're looking for.
Their need again. There's some need that you're going to fill.
Absolutely. So
why would they want to open that email or have a conversation with you?
Right. If you're asking for a raise, but you're asking the wrong person that doesn't have the capacity to give you that raise, now that's a mistake. You're not going to get anywhere. Right. So do your homework on that. And I think in this day and age, there's no excuse to not do your homework. There's so much social media out there. Everybody's really proud of what they've done. They're really proud about showing things that they're interested in. It's pretty easy to do some quick research.
So if you have a woman come to you, and she basically comes from this place of strength and confidence and knowing, clarity around her vision and believing in that vision, all these different things, you're much more likely to at least have a conversation, to start that ball rolling forward, versus somebody who comes to you, you said, like an email, like, oh, you may not have time, and making excuses and the defenses. That person's energy right away is one of a lack of confidence in projecting something. You may not even respond to that email then.
You're absolutely right. Well, first of all, I always respond to every woman who reaches out.
Good for you.
Because I feel it's really important, and I want to validate that any idea that someone has is a valuable idea. It just might not be
right for you?
Something that's fundable from a venture capital perspective. So when people are when they lack confidence and they say, oh, I don't want to bother you, or you probably don't have time, I say to them, look, this is my job. I'm supposed to be reviewing opportunities. So you should have the confidence to walk in the door. Now, what does frustrate me sometimes is just what I said, you should know who you're talking to. And we're very clear on our website about the types and the stage of companies we invest in. So we wait until we'd like to see some revenues. We like to see customers buying it. We like to see the dogs eating the dog food.
Something is built.
Yes, exactly. So we call that Series A in our business. And we also say on our website that we do mostly enterprise software. That's software for businesses and technology companies. So sometimes it's frustrating because people will come to me with a really great idea with an interesting business, but it's just way outside what we look at in terms of a fundable company. So then I have to say, well, if you looked on our website, you'd see that we focus on technology companies. But then the next thing also too is to really know yourself well and to be able to define who you are and what you're bringing to the table. A lot of times, an ask, it's not a hands out ask. If you're asking for a raise, you're not just saying, just give me money because I want it.
There's a reason.
It's an exchange. Yeah. And when you think of it more of that, yes, exactly. So you have to know what your value proposition is and what you're bringing to the table too. You're not just saying, hey, go pay my rent. You're saying, I have brought something to the table, so this is what I expect in exchange. And I always tell people to do not a personal resume of where you've worked, but how about a value resume of what you have done and the revenues that you've brought to the company that you're looking for a raise, or the growth in your company when you're looking for funding, or some of the interesting parts about you if you're asking someone for a date. All those things show your value proposition, not just, hey, are you going to do something for me? Because that's just a demand.
What a concept. I love that you bring sexy to financial freedom, and then you also talk about a value resume, because it sounds to me like that's almost like, what do they call it, like at the end of your life when you go through and look at all the amazing things you've done, and it just builds this wealth of like belief in yourself.
And that's not a job title.
Yeah, exactly. But that helps us again, be it venture capital or anything else. We're always, we need things in life, right? We need to ask for things. So anytime we ask for something, knowing our value and believing in ourselves comes from knowing our value.
Right. And maybe some of your viewers out there are women who want to make a change and they haven't done anything. They don't feel like they have anything to put on their value resume. And to that, I say, just start doing it. If you want to be a writer, just start writing. If you want to be an artist, just start painting or drawing, whatever it is that you'd like to do. When I decided that I wanted to go back and invest in venture capital, I started by investing my own capital in businesses. So I started doing what it is that I wanted to do. And that way you build up your value resume. I built up my reputation and my returns to be able to do what I'm doing now. So even if you've done nothing.
That's great advice. So
start tomorrow.
For all those women at home, because our audience, a lot of people are in the process of reinvention.
Sure, as they should be.
Yeah, at midlife and beyond, a lot of them are being aged out or going through divorces for, whatever, maybe health challenges. Whatever it is, they're in a process of reinvention. A lot of times they have no idea where to begin.
Exactly.
So that's great advice. Take action in whatever it is. You see somebody else who's a writer, I want to be a writer, go write. Go put up a free account on medium.com and start somewhere.
And with technology, there's so many resources that are free and places to ask questions that are free. And sometimes people will ask me to mentor them, and I'm happy to do that, but I am pressed for time. And I always remind people that the best place to get a mentor is the library. There are so many fantastic books out there of people who have been successful in probably exactly the field that you're looking at. So either read up about them on the internet or take a book out of the library.
Right now in this virtual world we're in, it's everywhere, and they're actually online, even Ivy League courses. I mean, there are free online courses like everywhere, no matter what I'm a library girl, but I also love going online and just getting wealth of information.
Khan Academy, Coursera, it's available. I don't want to say this, but there's almost no excuse anymore.
I know, right? There really is. I mean, I think that again is that's we got to call ourselves out. Because we can make all these excuses.
Yes.
And as women, the culture isn't so kind to us, so it is easy to make excuses and go, oh, we can't do that because of this and because of that. But no, you've got to open other doors and take those steps. So one of the things you talk about is in venture capital, and I just like using the lessons of venture capital out in the world. Some people come to you and they've maybe just pitched 20 different, done their pitch 20 different times, and they think, oh God, I'm exhausted, I'm done, that's too much. But you're like, no, you got to pitch like 200 times.
It's so true. Yes.
So I'd love for you to talk about that, because I think we'd give up too soon.
Yes, and that's the resilience and grit.
That's fierce.
That's being fierce.
That's fierce. That's being fierce.
Absolutely.
Keep going.
And that is such an essential component of it. But you have to do those homework steps first of creating that value basis and knowing what your value proposition is, making sure that you know what the person is interested, so that it's a good exchange.
Exactly.
And then go for the kill.
And then go for it.
I always say, women, you have to make a list of at least 100 venture capital funds. And then you just tick them off the list. And LinkedIn is such a fabulous resource.
LinkedIn is a great resource.
So whether it's raising capital or whether it's for people that have businesses that are looking for customers, a lot of times someone will say, hey, Tracy, do you know someone at Cisco? And I quickly go on LinkedIn and find all the people I know at Cisco, and then I go ahead and call them. So
that's easy, free, available.
If you haven't made a LinkedIn account, you should do that, and absolutely start using that and asking your friends to help and to make introductions.
Yeah. I love that you mentor women. So tell me, and I know you clearly are pressed for time. The venture capital world, you have a lot going on.
It's tough, and I have a husband and two sons that I adore too.
Yeah. So given our audience, a lot of women out there are, at midlife and beyond, looking to reinvent themselves. What would be your top 3 pieces of advice you've shared with people you've mentored?
Number 1, get your financial house in order. There's no excuse. There are so many, again, online resources. We're living in a really magical time, and a time that can support women because they don't have to ask for permission. You don't have to go out and find a money manager anymore. Almost every bank has a robo-advisor that does money management. There is no excuse if you have more than $3,000 or $4,000. There's no excuse to have just money market accounts. You should have ETFs. You should have a balanced portfolio, and robo-advisors can help you do that now through just about any bank. So that's first and foremost. We have to make sure that we're not spending too much on our credit cards. That goes along with it too. But once you've gotten your financial house in order and you have resources, if you'd like to move on to doing something, then like we said, talk about your value resume. Where have you created value, and where do you see a need? If there's a pressing need for something, that's a real place to start if you're building a company. And oftentimes I say to women, you pretty much need 3 years of personal capital, because it takes about 3 years for a company, any company, whether we're talking about venture-backed or something that you're just creating yourself with maybe a friend, and that's all you want to do. You really need 3 years of personal money to make that happen.
So there are many women, like you said, that are looking to reinvent themselves, aged out, and they go out and they're looking for jobs and they can't find them because they don't exist for older people. So obviously then a lot of them are starting their own businesses.
Right.
What advice do you have for somebody out there who maybe has been looking for a while and hasn't been able to find a job, who's interested in starting and, not necessarily looking for venture capital, but like you said, there's other alternatives, GoFundMe, but what advice do you have for them for maybe starting their own, maybe a flower shop, like Miss Florist who just stopped by?
Which is fantastic, and there are so many now resources at the state level and the larger cities. Some of the smaller towns are catching up, but certainly if you live, say, within 100 miles or 200 miles of a larger city, check to see if they have a women's business development organization in those cities, because very often, I know, for example, because I live in the area, New York City has done a phenomenal job of this, and New York City really is on a path to be the center of the world for women entrepreneurs. And they have tremendous support in terms of free resources for how to finance your business, whether debt or equity is the right type of money to take, and how much you should take, which is a really interesting problem to solve for. How many people you should hire, what there might be grants available. That's one of the most interesting places that women forget.
Money.
Free money is the best money.
Free money is good money.
It's non-dilutive. Yeah. It doesn't matter what type of business you're starting. If you can access some free money, and if you're doing something that's good for the world, generally speaking, there are grants available to help you do that.
Now that's amazing. Yeah. And we know, again, back to women. Women, naturally have the heart where they want to. You can make money and you can do good things in the world.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you're doing incredible things. And I love that you're reframing the whole conversation, like value, sexy, all these things we don't think of when we think of, money and venture capital. So there are other alternatives, GoFundMe's, grants, like you said, online resources, build your resume, know your value resume, know your value, know the idea that you want to pitch, research who you are sending that email to. And there was another one, research your competitor. Know your competition, whether you're in business or want to go into business. It's really important. You said in one of the things I read, if they don't know your competitor, you're going to know their competitor.
And I always say that, just put it in the deck.
Yeah,
just acknowledge it. Yeah. And a lot of times that's a good thing. If there's competitors, we call that market validation.
There you go.
There's
a reason for your business, clearly, right there.
Sometimes if you're the only one doing it, it could be that you're very prescient and you're way ahead of the curve, but it also could be that really nobody wants this business in the first place. And that's a scary thing.
So you do the research. You want them to know the research because obviously, like you said, one's a positive and one is very clearly a negative.
We're data driven, and we often will take 2 months to do due diligence on both the market opportunity for a company, but then also to whether or not the company itself has prospects going forward.
Right. So this statement that Kevin O'Leary had made about Mr. Wonderful, and about women, and
terrific.
It's incredible. And I guess it was like 55% of his investments are in companies that are run or founded by women because they are the most successful. He's like, it's not a moral ethics thing for me. He said, it's a bottom line. They're making me more money.
And that is for me as well, that I look at it as an inefficient market and a place to get above market returns, because that's what we're looking for in venture capital. We're looking to get the highest returns possible. And why wouldn't you go to the place that's statistically proven to give you better returns and more value for dollar?
That would seem to make a lot of sense to me.
Yes.
And then this whole other concept, like you said, of silver investing.
Right.
And that's
another place people aren't looking.
Another place people aren't looking.
Yeah, I like to know secrets.
You like to know secrets. Well, you said here too, in the States, we have this fascination with youth.
Right.
So do you find that outside? Like if you're in Europe, are they more open-minded when it comes to investing than we are here?
We're the most aggressive culture in terms of investing. The Europeans are starting to accelerate their investment process, and the Chinese now are doing an incredible amount of investing in technology companies, and we will see them outpace investment in the United States, especially in spaces like artificial intelligence, which relies on vast data sets, meaning they're looking for lots of information from lots of different people so that they can look for trends. And when you're looking at a country that has billions and billions of people, you get a much broader data set. So they're doing some interesting things over there too, but we're really the ones that accelerate innovation and investment here in this country.
It makes sense. And you bring up technology. I think it's really important because a lot of there's this perception of older people not being tech savvy, and really we didn't grow up with it. We have to learn it. So there might be people out there who are afraid of technology, and again, there's a lot of free resources. So what advice would you give them? Because we do need to be somewhat tech savvy in this day and age in order to launch a business particularly.
Well, I think it's not just the responsibility of people that are over 50 or 60 that they have to come to technology. I think it's also the responsibility of technology to come to the people that are over 50 or 60 that might have some challenges with technology. So yes, I do believe that everyone should find a way to be connected, and there's so many resources and so much more in life that happens through technology. I think that it's a shame if you're not getting photographs of your grandchildren. It's a shame if you're not getting an email from a friend or looking to see what they're doing on social media sites. But then at the same time, it's a responsibility of the technology companies to make what we call the UX or user experience available for someone that isn't tech savvy. And there's a tremendous amount of research, as you mentioned, the Age Lab at MIT, also Stanford Longevity Center is doing a lot of the same work. That is where we need to go, especially since that demographic, as we mentioned earlier, controls 80% of the wealth in this country.
Right, and again, the numbers don't lie.
No.
Clearly, there's knowledge, there's power, there's money, there's all kinds of incredible things in the older demographic. So, other people should really consider silver investing. I think it's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. Well, not too many people.
Not, you like that pool.
I don't want
having that pool.
I'd rather not have the competition. Thank you.
Yeah, I totally hear you. But at least, backing women, I think it's brilliant. And seeing women, in a position like you allows, other women, young women especially, to go, wow, this isn't just for men. This is for me too.
Well, and I always say you can't be what you can't see.
Right.
And it is very important. If we don't see more women entrepreneurs, if we don't see more women investors, then we think that that's not the norm when it should be.
And speaking of that, for you, who's been your greatest? Who did you see? Was there a role model, a mentor, a female in there who really you were like, that's who I want to be, or who really changed your life?
Don't laugh, but it was Candace. Shoot, you have to ask me again, because Candace, what's her name? Candace from Murphy Brown.
Oh, Candace Bergen. Candace Bergen.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's fantastic. You actually you look like her.
Well, maybe it's it's subconscious.
You did, and it's
right?
Interesting. Yeah, the hair, everything.
Yeah.
Interesting. So that is not what I would have expected.
No, but
it's fantastic.
But being a little girl and being at home and turning on the television and seeing Candace Bergen as Murphy Brown, that was the first woman I'd ever seen in a really professional role. We had Mary Tyler Moore, who was a writer, but Candace Bergen was the boss.
She was. You didn't mess with her, did you? Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, she was badass.
And
she was fierce.
She was fierce. Absolutely. And I had a stay-at-home mother who was wonderful and took care of me, but I didn't see that in my home. I had to see it on television. So that shows you the role that media plays in people's lives, right?
It's powerful. That reminds me of like that Oprah moment, was it the Golden Globes, where she was talking about being on the linoleum floor and watching, on the TV as this African American got like the Golden Globe, and it didn't happen. And that seed was planted through that moment. So we never know who's planting a seed. Like that's a very unlikely seed.
No, I know.
And she's still out there doing, what was it, book club she just did?
Yeah.
Candace Bergen? I mean, she's still killing it.
Yes.
So she is still as empowered and fierce as ever before.
Absolutely.
Amazing. So if people want to reach out to you, if they, want to contact you, maybe somebody out there has an idea for you. Number one, research her. Research, know about her, know about the company, know about what 1843 Capital wants to invest in.
Right.
But how to contact you, how to work with you, in any way?
Well, first of all, and like you mentioned, my website, which is www.1843capital.com, I have a list of resources.
Oh, fantastic.
Absolutely. It's a list of crowdfunding resources. It's also a list of some non-dilutive grants. There's seed stage investors that are on there, and then we get up to my stage, which is the venture capital investors. So that's all there, which is really, been very happy for people. And then when they do get to that point, if they're approaching about $1 million in revenue a year, I would love to speak to them, and they can reach me at Tracy@1843capital.com.
There you go, 1843capital.com, Tracy at 1843capital.com.
Yes.
And you are doing amazing things to really change the conversation and bring sexy value and really change a frame, which, we love revolutions and changing paradigms and shifting, mindsets. And so we're delighted to have you here today and sharing all this wisdom with our audience.
Well, I feel the same about you, so thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Well, in the meantime, thank you, beauties, for tuning in today, and definitely check out Tracy. And I think those were incredible words of wisdom. So cheers, beauties. Stay fierce.